Hey everybody, I'm going to slowly get started just to be respectful of everybody that's already here. My name is Rochelle Fajardo. I am the training coordinator for the HMIS team at All Chicago. Today I will be walking through the new street outreach workflow that is expected to transition, we're expected to transition to in November 1st. So to get us started. So for our agenda today, first thing will be some housekeeping items. I'm going to go over an overview of the timeline and like the article on our help desk. I'm going to walk through the workflow and kind of demonstrate each step using the training site. As housekeeping, so the way our webinars are always set up, non-presenters will be muted. Please use the questions feature in the dashboard, in the dash of GoToWebinar. Use that to send in some questions if you have some. I'm happy to answer them as much as we can in real time. I also have a couple other team members on to kind of help me answer those as I am walking through this workflow. So this webinar is also not intended to address any specific client data situations or anything specific to your agency's experience and situation. So for something specific like that, please just send in the ticket just so we can stay focused in this webinar. And then finally, the recording itself will be made available by tomorrow. The slides I will be going over is actually already posted. And I will link that in the chat shortly. Let me actually link that. So to actually find it, so I wanted to show you that here's our help desk homepage. As of right now, this workflow article is featured in the front just because it is like a new update that's happening in November, so it's easy to find. So we're going to go over that, and I'm going to send this link in the chat just so you can follow along with me if you so choose. So just to kind of quickly go through a quick timeline of this transition, October 4th, we published this article and was made available. We also had a COC newsletter item go out on this day, and then a mass email to all active users announcing this upcoming change and to announce the webinars. October 19th, right now, is the scheduled webinar that's recorded to provide this walkthrough and allow a space to kind of ask some questions. This is recorded and will be posted in this same article right here. It is also going to be identical to the second webinar next week, October 24th, that's scheduled. We're just allowing a couple times just to allow people to attend if they cannot make it to this one. So if you have attended today, you do not need to attend the second one next week. But this one today will be recorded and posted. The one next week will not be recorded. In addition, October 24th as well, that same day that the webinar comes out, I will also be releasing the course, updating the LMS course. So users that are currently in training will have to go back and complete this module and incorporated quizzes if they happen to be in the middle of training during that time. If you already have access, this is the training for you. So the LMS module course will just be for incoming new users. And then that same week, October 24th to November 7th, so the week before and the week after November 1st, which is when this workflow is going to be in effect. So we'll be holding some office hours if you so choose, if you think you need some extra support. You may submit a ticket to request some office hours where we can walk through personally, one-on-one, this workflow that we'll be going through. And just some few things to kind of a quick overview of what is changing. Not too much, we're kind of just we're simplifying the workflow and aligning it more to HUD standards. So you will not need to document positive or negative encounters of service transactions, and each contact needs to be documented as an interim assessment along with a current living situation entry. And then the slides, when I go through the workflow, I'm going to go in detail on what that means. And then the slide deck that I will be going through is down here. Let me get started there. Open. Again, here's our overview. 3 main steps in this workflow. We got contacts, engagement, and exit. So previously, contacts was encounters. So contacts are just defined as any interaction between a worker and a client designed to engage that client. So this is anytime you meet with them, but yet they have not completed the rest of the assessment. So once they decide that they want to complete the rest of the assessment to figure out what else they're eligible for, they want to complete the consent forms, that is now the date of engagement. And then exit, project exit is when the client stops participating in that project. First step is our contacts. So again, contacts are defined as the interaction between the worker and a client and is designed to engage them. So in this first slide section, we're going to walk through how to document that contact. So examples of that would just be conversations about their well-being or needs, visit to discuss some plans, maybe a referral to other services, but anytime you are coming in contact with them. First step, when you first meet a client, you find the record, right? If you have met a client in person or on the phone, you need to find the record and either add to that record or create one for them. So sometimes clients aren't willing to provide a full name. In that situation, we'd be using a naming convention. As of right now, we're using a current naming convention in which for the first name, if they give you your first name, make sure you put that in the first name field. If they did not, we should have the date of contact. And then the last name would be a distinguishing characteristic or location. For example, if a client has used the name Joe, but did not give their last name, their name in the HMIS should be Joe Harrison and Halstead. If they didn't provide either one of the name, we have the date of the contact, May 6th, and the time, 2/4, and their last name as Red Hat, which is a distinguishing character. So this naming convention might change, so just be aware and keep a lookout on correspondence from us, and we'll let you know, of course, before it does change. But as of right now, this is the current naming convention that should be used to avoid duplicate records. And when you are using this naming convention, make sure you are selecting the appropriate option for the name data quality question. We should be selecting partial, street name, or code name reported. So I'm going to demo that by creating a client here in our training environment. So if, for example, we met a client that did not want to give them their name, we're going to say October 19, 2:12 p.m. Last name would be some type of distinguishing character, outreach, web. Right, and our name data quality should be partial, street name, code name reported, search, and then we're going to add new client. Never add any anonymous clients, just so we can find them in our system. And anytime you add a new client, always add them to a new household. Not ever leave clients without households. So add them into a new household. Let's say October 19 is a single male. We're going to continue. They are the head of household. Mark this self. Right? Save and exit. Okay. First contact, October 19. Go back to, all right. We've created our record. So when making that first contact, a few main things need to be documented. So the client should be enrolled in the project on that date. Within that entry assessment, we need to complete the relationship to head of household, add a location. We also need to add a current living situation entry that reflects the date and location of that first contact. And then finally, although it's not required, we need to prioritize collecting as much of their demographic information as possible during this period of time. Again, let's go back to our client, October 19. So I will be enrolling them into an outreach project. So we're going to add an entry exit, include our household number, look for our All Chicago outreach. Sure, select HUD, and today is our first contact. Okay. So we have enrolled them into our project. Okay. Our project start date is our first contact. And we need to answer the first two questions, the relationship of head of household, which is self. Enrollment COC is always going to be on I-510. We would then fill out whatever information we do have from them, but we need to document our contact in the current living situation. So add start date, say our information date is today. Obviously, it doesn't need to be today, it could be within 2 days. And then we will say that they were in a place not meant for habitation. They don't need to leave. Okay, and that documents our first contact. And then if I had any other information, I would add that in there. Save and exit. Next step would be to document additional contacts. Before I go to that, before I add new contacts, I'm just going to pause and see if there's anybody that would like to have any questions about how to document that first contact. All right. So documenting additional contacts. So because of the timestamp nature of the HMIS, additional contacts need to be entered through the interim review. Previously, the old training asked people to add it in the entry assessment here, which if you date anything after that entry date, it's not going to show up, and it got a little bit complicated. So in order to ensure that you have visibility to all the contacts, we're going to start adding an interim review to document those other contacts. So if you notice here in this example on the slides, each contact are going to have its own interim review, and all that is expected in that interim review is that you add the current living situation entry. So an interim review for each contact until that date of engagement with a current living situation entry. That means I'm back on my test client. I'm going to add an interim review. Let's say that we met with them the 20th. Update, save and continue. Second contact, so the only thing we need to add is a current living situation entry. with that same date, 10/20, information date, 10/20. Maybe they're still in the same place, and if they are, you just select the same thing. If they're somewhere else, like an emergency shelter, then you would just select that to document that contact. Save, 10/20, we've had 2 contacts. If I have any extra information about them at this point, I can add them to this assessment. Otherwise, that is all I need to do. Again, if I have another contact with them, I'd add another review, I'd add another entry. Okay. Right, and that is all for contact. So in the slide deck, as you can see, there is a quick demo that demonstrates this process that you may look at your own time. Okay. Next step would be the engagement. So engagement is when the client relationship has led them to agreeing to complete the assessment itself or develop a case plan. This is also the point that data quality expectations begin. That means that this date of engagement is really important in making sure that your client is counted as being enrolled in your project. If this is not entered correctly or is not entered at all, you may see some discrepancies in your reporting later on. So this is a really important step in making sure that your records are complete. This specific section is going to walk through how to document that engagement correctly. So before we enroll them into completely and have the data quality standards start, we need to provide them with the client consent forms and complete the ROI. So I'm gonna go back to my client record. Okay. I'm gonna complete this ROI. Make sure there is 2 of them every time. Include them here. Leave our providers the same, release granted yes, and let's say today is the 21st and it is our date of engagement now. So 21st, and then we're gonna add 10 years. 3 years. And then let's say they're just gonna share it. I'm going to do the release. Have a second release of information. And then we need to add a supplemental. That supplemental is only for adults. Now we have 2 release of information. Okay. If we need to, we might need to lock our record as well. Since our test client, I had selected A, we're just going to leave them as is. Second step is to document that contact again and the date of engagement. So similarly, we go to our entry exit, go to our interim, add an interim review, and review type is update. Our review date is going to be our date of engagement, is 10/21. Save and continue. All we need to do is add an entry for a current living situation for 10/21, information date 10/21. Let's say now they're in a shelter. They don't have to leave. Save. And then I'm going to add a date of engagement for today as well. Also going to add some end dates here. Make sure we only have 1 left. Okay. And that is all I need to do in this interim. Save and exit. And so we added interim review, current living situation entry, and the date of engagement. The next step would be to go back to my entry assessment and complete the rest of that. So do this interim review, and I'm going to go back to my entry assessment here. Save and continue. Complete the rest of the assessment as well as necessary. I'm not going to do that right now. And I also probably need to change the name, which you would then do in the client profile. If I change this here, test, outreach, and then we were going to change the name data quality to full name reported. And that is engagement. Again, there is another demo here. Oh, I feel there's some questions. Okay. Maria's question was already answered. Just want to make sure every contact gets documented. Yes, every contact should be documented. Understand. Can the end date be the same as the new current living situation? Do we need to make sure that it is the day before? So with the end date, it just can't start on the same date. So what I had here, let's see, was that this place not meant for habitation just ended before this started. This new one started. I hope that clarifies your question. Okay. Awesome. Great. So one last step in this workflow is to exit them. Okay. That is when they stop participating in the project. And that reasons to exit clients would be that they have entered another project type or otherwise found housing. And now there's a bit of a transition period that is allowed that we've talked to some agencies about. So we know that that is part of some people's workflow, is that maybe for about a month or so they're enrolled in both. That's totally okay. The client is engaged with another outreach worker or project. The client is deceased, or they have been unable to locate the client for an extended period of time. This time period is determined by your specific agency. So the only thing that needs to be done is that the exit date should be completed. That should be the date that the client stopped receiving regular services or has met any of the previous reasons. If they have been unable to complete the rest of the exit assessment, which just means like provide an update or like actually voluntarily let you know that they are leaving the program, then you just then the date of the last recorded current living situation should be used as the exit date. So for example, in our situation here, if our client disappears for like 3 months, let's say it's now January 1st, we haven't heard from Test Outreach, and the last time we talked to them was our date of engagement was at 10/21. If I haven't talked to them in that long, then my exit date would be 10/21. Now, let's say it is just a normal enrollment, then our exit date can be just 1/1/2024. Reason for leaving, left for housing opportunity, filled by client. Okay, and then that's all we would need to do for an exit assessment, besides updating the assessment itself. Again, it should just be the day that they stop receiving services or the last date of recorded current living situation. And you would then complete the exit assessment. Okay. And as a final, like, quick overview of what we kind of went over here of what this workflow. Okay. Will it be considered poor data quality that you didn't exit them closer to the time you last saw them 2.5 months ago? No, because again, like that time frame that you would determine that the client is now missing or you can't contact them is kind of determined by your agency. So that's not a data quality issue that would occur. Great questions. Let's go through just a quick summary. Please keep sending in your questions. So again, there's 3 parts of the workflow. We got our contacts, and that's just the interaction between the worker and the client, designed to engage the clients. Some tasks at that point in time would be that first contact is that project enrollment. Make sure you're adding a current living situation entry and an interim review for each additional contact. Once the client has agreed to complete the assessment and further assessing to further assess their eligibility for other services, they are now at a point of date of engagement. Some tasks that needs to be complete during the engagement is that the ROI needs to be completed. Still need to document those contacts through that current living situation entry and interim review, and then complete the rest of the entry assessment. I see a question here from Vernon. If a child has a disability but they don't need a supplemental, I'm not sure of the exact question I should be asking. Should this data, child dependent disabilities, be collected? So the children don't need to have their own. Their parent would answer that supplemental for them. Or a guardian, the adults in the family household. And the final step of our workflow is that exit. That's when they stop participating in the project, and the only HMIS task would be to project exit date and the current living situation entry. And that is all for our presentation today. We have gotten to the end of our scheduled webinar. I'll definitely be staying on for a few more minutes to answer any questions that you guys might have lingering. Please send them in. If you don't have any further questions, I did send the link in the chat already to this article, and all the materials will be there. The recording of this webinar will be posted there by tomorrow. I'm actually going